Our beloved vice captain of the Straw Hats, Roronoa Zoro, is undoubtedly going to be one of the strongest characters in the series when One Piece comes to its end. However, in chapter 1152 of the One Piece manga, Oda touches on Zoro's strength, which is something we haven't really examined since the end of Wano when he defeated King. And with this interesting dialogue about Zoro's strength, it comes questions of if he's actually not as strong as we thought. Ever since Zoro defeated King, I was curious about how strong he actually was, considering there was sort of mixed signals on the types of powers he was using to win that fight. And now finally Oda has chosen to touch on that topic in the most recent chapter, so today we're going to be looking at how it's possible Zoro actually isn't as strong as we thought he was, but also how much room that means he has to improve and what power-ups he could get in the future of the story. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe, and if you enjoyed the most recent One Piece chapter, look out for next week's video where I'm going to touch on possibly the biggest reveal in the chapter, Shanks being the child of destiny, and I'll be putting together a timeline of his entire life, so look out for that video. So first, let's do a little recap on how strong we thought Zoro was when he defeated King in the end of Wano. Defeating Kaido's right-hand man is a huge deal, but what makes it an even bigger deal is that King was a Lunarian, some of the most durable characters in the entire story, which means Zoro reached insane heights to be able to win this fight. Those insane heights being the unlocking of Conqueror's Haki, and even its advanced form, putting it into his swords to be able to damage durable King. Wano was all about Conqueror's Haki, and just previously in that arc, Luffy had unlocked this exact same ability in order to defeat Kaido, so when Zoro started doing the same thing, a lot of fans were questioning, did he just jump to Luffy's level just like that? And that's sort of exactly what I was wondering when Zoro defeated King. Oda's not exactly the best at displaying what levels of Haki are being used on the pages, but at the very least we knew some form of Conqueror's Haki was being used due to the dialogue about Zoro's kingly ambition and him knocking out all the fodder around him. However, anytime this fight was brought up in discussion online, I would always find myself siding with the people claiming that Zoro required Enma, his new cursed sword from Odin, to pull out that latent Conqueror's Haki in his system in order to use it to defeat King. He wasn't capable of controlling it himself and applying it to his swords with his free will, which is why a lot of the dialogue points to Enma almost killing Zoro in this fight, because it is literally sucking all the power out of Zoro in order to help him defeat King. And this is where the divide on Zoro's strength began. You had some Zoro fans saying that Zoro had complete control over advanced Conqueror's Haki and that he was comparable to Luffy because it is one of the most powerful tools in the series that only a handful of people can use according to Kaido. And then you had some people, like myself, claiming that he was only able to use a fraction of this power against his will because Enma was drawing it out of him in order to defeat King. I also think this is the reason why Zoro saw the Grim Reaper at the end of this fight with King, because he was so close to death due to Enma literally drawing out every last bit of his Conqueror's Haki from his soul. And if Zoro was able to really control this power, this scene would not have been included at the end of the fight. But all of this arguing is finally put to rest with the most recent One Piece chapter, where Gabon tells Zoro that he has Conqueror's Haki when he's talking about it is necessary to have Conqueror's Haki to defeat the God's Knights. Now, the fact that Gabon says Conqueror's Haki is a huge factor in defeating the God's Knight's invulnerability is massive for the story. I'm not going to touch on it too much in this video. The most important part of this video is that Gabon is telling Zoro he has Conqueror's Haki. He could be of massive use to the conflict on Elbaf right now because he is one of the people capable of damaging the God's Knights. However, Zoro's response to this all but confirms what we were arguing about in Wano. He had no idea that he had Conqueror's Haki. This just confirms exactly what I and many other One Piece fans thought. Enma was pulling this Conqueror's Haki out of Zoro's body. He was not using advanced Conqueror's Haki with his own will, which means Zoro is not on the same level as Luffy. He does not have anywhere near the same level of control over his Haki, which is actually what Gabon is yelling at him for right now. So yes, to answer the short version of the question in this video, no, Zoro is not that strong compared to what we thought he was at the end of Wano. He still has plenty of room to growth. And me personally, I think he's way more comparable to Sanji's strength than Luffy's strength. That's another story for another day. But the point in this video is not to slander Zoro saying he's much weaker than we thought. This actually means he has a lot of room for improvement and we could be getting a very Zoro-centric arc in Elbaf where he does reach those heights we thought he reached in Wano. Because the power-ups in Wano were so insane, a lot of people, including myself, were a little bit worried about the progression of power in One Piece, stating things like, we're not sure how the Straw Hats are going to get any stronger for the end of the series. Oda kind of used his entire bag of power-ups in Wano. But the fact that Zoro doesn't even know he has Conqueror's Haki means there is so much room for him to improve. Similar to how Luffy has to work on Gear 5 stamina, Zoro's going to have to figure out how to draw out that Conqueror's Haki on his own, and not die every time Enma requires that strength from him. And not only that, when he learns to do that, he'll also become capable of damaging the God's Knights, becoming a very powerful tool for the Straw Hats to escape this Elbaf conundrum. I also think this power is going to be huge for helping Zoro eventually learn to create a Black Blade. In order to control your Conqueror's Haki and apply it to your weapons, you probably need an insane amount of strength and concentration, and I think the technique of applying Conqueror's Haki to your swords is probably very similar to forging a Black Blade. In fact, it probably does have to do with Conqueror's Haki and applying it permanently to your weapons. So we could actually be seeing the first inklings of how to create a Black Blade in this arc when Zoro learns to control his Conqueror's Haki. I also think this could be huge for the entire Straw Hat crew. Luffy is an absolute monster who's sort of able to just pick up any technique on a whim and know how to use it perfectly, like Advanced Conqueror's Haki. But if Zoro goes through the actual methodology of learning how to apply Conqueror's Haki to his swords, I think he could be the one to help the other Straw Hats learn basic Haki, because half of our crew doesn't even know that basic skill, and like Gaban said, if our captain is a Yonko, we need to be learning and taming our Haki in order to help him become the Pirate King. And I'll be honest, it is unacceptable that over half of the crew is unable to use this basic New World skill. Once again, I did not make this video to slander Zoro. I think it's actually really cool that he has a lot of room for strength, and it could mean we're going to get a lot of Zoro screen time in Elbaf, which I am all for. But I just wanted to make this video to finally put to rest the arguments we were having in Wano. No, Zoro did not know he had Conqueror's Haki. No, he was not willingly putting it on his swords and using Advanced Conqueror's Haki at the same level as Luffy. Yes, he required Enma to pull that latent power out of him, and Enma was a giant power-up in itself, not exactly Zoro using it on his own. However, Zoro's growth is something we're all going to be examining very closely, and if you want to keep up with every Elbaf chapter where Zoro potentially is going to learn this skill, make sure to subscribe. I make videos for every Elbaf chapter, and One Piece has been honestly insane recently, so every chapter is worth talking about. Thanks for watching, and until next time.